Good evening and welcome to episode 10 of Spooky Town and Tales. 10.
10, you've done it, lady. Congratulations.
Made it to double digit.
Good job, you.
Welcome to the show. For the 10th episode, we're going to be doing a second UFO episode as I got completely inundated with UFO tales or flying weird light stories. So tonight we'll be sharing a lot of local stories. Pretty much every story bar one, I believe, is in Western Australia. So, and we've got a lot. We've got a lot. So, a lot to get through. So we won't beat around the bush too much like we normally do. I've calmed down now after having got a bit excited watching the Crayola factory video from the old Sesame Street episode several times. I've calmed myself down. I'm back. I'm stable now.
Call it what you will.
I will admit,
Stable-ish.
the word Crayola is still getting me a little bit hemmed up. I'm watching those crayons being pushed through that mould. My God. Oh, my God. Anyway, we weren't going to shoot the shit in here.
No, stop it.
Off on a tangent. So anyway, let's stay focused. So are you comfortable? Are you relaxed? Do you have a drink in hand? Good. Just checking. Giving me time to think there. Okay. Turn off the lights and prepare to be
Spooked.
Okay, to kick off the UFO episode number 2 of Spooky Town Tales episode number 10, 12 altogether. I'm good at maths.
You math's good.
So to kick it off, I'm going to start with the one that's closest to us that I received, which was, it was an Argyle resident, and this took place between Dardanup and Boyanup. And this was this year. So this is a recent one. So this was only 2 months ago in May.
Really?
Yes.
Whoa.
So here we go. In May, I was coming back from a family get-together in Eton late one night. Just the kids and I. It was a quiet night, about 10:30 p.m, and I'd only come across about 2 cars once I was out of the Bunbury area. As I passed out of Dardanup, a single bright light came up behind my car, very fast, and at first I wondered how I'd missed seeing them pull out of Dardanup and thought it must be a motorbike. But then I realised there was no sound coming from it. It was tailing me so close the light was flooding into the car, and it woke up my oldest son, who is 8. And then we were all getting worried. I also had to put my foot down just to go 100 to try to put some space between us and the light. I was getting quite worried and wondering if it was a motorbike, why wasn't it just overtaking us? If it was so close, and why I couldn't hear the bike. Then as soon as I hit the 80 zone sign to come into Boyanup, it disappeared. I looked in my rear view mirror to try and see where it went, but nothing. And it was dark, so I thought I would see something, being such a bright light. After that, I realised it must have gone up. I was pretty shaken after that and didn't really want to drive the rest of the way home to Argyle.
Whoa.
Now, I know where that is, and there isn't any side roads.
No turn-offs on
There's
that
no turn-offs
section.
like at the 80, where it goes to 80.
Nope.
It's just trees either side.
Yep.
There's absolutely nowhere else that bike could have gone if it was a motorbike.
Nope.
And even if it had done a U-ey or turned around, she would have heard it.
And seen the tail light.
And seen the tail light. That's super duper weird.
Totally.
And that it was that bright, it woke up the sun, the light.
Yeah, that's pretty bright.
Very bright. Now, this, you are not alone, listener, because this is such a common story from this area.
That's crazy.
It's very, very common. And it's been being reported, lights following cars, coming up beside cars with no explanation. It's been happening all over WA, but there have been a fair few from this area, mainly Greenbushes area and the Boyup Brook Road.
Yeah.
But there's just too many. It's too coincidental. There are so many. Another weird local one while we're in the neck of the woods was it was a little sub note underneath another story I received from this listener.
Yeah.
And apparently her partner a couple of years ago said he was late one night when he was driving, he saw a cow levitating
What?
in a field. And I was like, was he on crack? No, but like,
What sort of a side note is that?
yeah, and I was like, you can't. So what I'm going to do is, if you're listening, but if not, I'll just have to email you. If you're listening, I want to hear more about this levitating cow.
Absolutely.
You can't just tease me with that.
That's really cool.
I need to know more. So, yes, so...
On the same note, sorry, as the first one, just that road, that's like a dead straight road too.
Dead straight.
That's what I find really crazy about it. Like, there is, not only could you not turn off that road, but there is nowhere else to go. Like, you can see back easily a good 5 k's down that road.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
So...
Not to mention the sound. She would have heard a motorbike. It's so quiet down that road at night. I've done the late night drive down that road. It's eerily quiet.
It is.
You see every car that comes up. You
can see them from
see
miles
it from
away.
way away. Yeah, it's very bizarre.
Yeah.
Very, very peculiar. And it kind of brings me back to... I had another email from Joel.
Yeah.
And regarding the Min Min lights, he said Querriting Way has the same thing.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
cool.
they've got their own form of
Their
like
own
the Min
version.
Min light. And it was reported very similar, exactly the same thing, no sound.
Yep.
Bright light that seems to follow the cars.
Keeps up to speed.
Keeps up to speed. It's a similar stretch of road, and the farmer who lived down the stretch of road jokingly refers to the lights as it's just the aliens. Like he sort of brushes it off, calls it the aliens in a joking way, but no one knows what it is.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's another one. So Querriting's got their own.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm just going to read you a little bit of information I found about the indigenous folklore regarding lights in the sky and the superstitions behind it. So, in Arnhem Land, lights in the sky were considered an evil omen or an evil spirit, eye of an evil spirit. So when they would see even meteors, any form of flying light was deemed as like an evil spirit. So they would refer to them as Duwatus, Papajuwati, or Indada. So there's 3 different names from Arnhem Land that would be used to refer to lights in the sky. So they've got several names for these things. They're regularly recorded. But basically the theory, the folklore is that when you see one of these lights, it was searching for someone who was sick or dying.
So
that's their folklore.
Like death looking for the next person, really.
Yeah, or kind of there's someone who's... Yeah, they're hunting someone out whose time it is.
Whose time,
Yeah.
How crazy.
So
really
are all
cool.
these people witnessing these lights having a close scrape with
Who knows?
with death? I don't know, but it's pretty interesting that it's been documented in that area as
and
well.
several different names for them too, which
Yeah.
means it's generally a different version of the same thing.
Okay, on to the next story. So I'm going to jump to an old story before I read. I've got some incredible ones from the Manjimup area.
Yeah.
Like ones that you'll just be like, bullshit. But no, I've got some
Hogs
really...
Wallop.
Hogs Wallop. You're full of malarkey, lady. So I've been digging through archives trying to find similar stories of the area that will correlate with why there are so many recordings of these strange lights chasing cars, and majority of the ones that I found, that's the case. Someone driving down a road, see a very bright light, and it approaches them, and it disappears. But a lot of the older ones, some of them even got photographic evidence, and there's a lot of evidence in cover-ups where their cameras were taken from them, photos were taken from them. Yes.
Whoa.
So that happened a lot with a lot of these instances where people claim to see something, went to the police. More often than not, their cameras would be taken from them as, evidence, but then they'd never get the photos back.
Whoa.
So this is very interesting. So an example of this is this case that I have dug up from 1954, April 1954, dubbed a cold case, and it took place between the West Australia and South Australian border. This took place in Easter time in 1954. This is an instance that it was such a crazy story that the evidence that these guys got was taken from them.
Yep.
So
it was removed for their own protection.
Yeah, it was taken from them. So I'll read you the incident, and then you can sort of develop your own opinion from there of what you think's going on. So the date was Easter 1954. The place was near the border of South Australia and Western Australia. 3 young men were travelling to South Australia in an Austin A70 car. Now, I used to have an Austin A40.
Nice. A70 was a little bit smaller.
Was it?
Yeah, that would have been quite cramped because the A40 is quite small.
Yes. We managed to get the A40 to Esperance and back.
Yeah, I know. Not to the border, though. Luckily.
Not to the border. We didn't quite make it to the border, but... So, what a mission in itself, taking an Austin A70 across the border. So, they had passed through a town 17 miles from the West Australian border and 5 miles on the West Australian side. A saucer began to follow the car. It continued following them for about 50 miles, up to within 5 miles of the next town. It was very low at times, enough for them to see portholes in the object, and they took various photos of it with their cameras. And becoming a little concerned, they decided to inform the police at the next town, the saucer having now left them. The police, upon receiving the information, immediately rang the air control at Salisbury. The young men were detained, and a helicopter soon appeared from the Edinburgh airfield, distance approximately 200 miles. So they deployed a helicopter to come and greet these men. 2 Air Force officers got out of the copter. Oddly enough, although in uniform, they wore no rank badges, but they did have service ribbons. They asked the young men innumerable questions and demanded the 5 cameras, which had been used to take the photos, with which there were 3 35mm cameras, with 1 containing a colour film, and 2 black and white. All told, they had 92 exposures of the object. As well, there were 2 rolleicords, each with 12 exposures of black and white. The cameras were seized by the officials, and the men warned not to discuss the matter with anyone. The officers then left, and the young men continued on their way, a little scared. Yes, you would be.
Not wrong.
2 weeks later, their cameras were returned to them through the registered post with letters to each man warning them not to tell anyone of their experiences. Later, through other means, one of the party was able to secure one of the photos, but it was, in his opinion, the worst of the series taken. This young man is now living in England, and the person who has tracked all this information down is currently trying to find out.
Whoa.
Like, get a hold of that photo at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, according to the witness, the saucer followed for about 100 yards away from the car. So, and was mostly about 50 feet above them, until they turned the car around to face it. So it was trailing him a long time.
Yeah.
It was then that the saucer came and hovered over them, and they were able to take the most excellent photos of the object. Some were very good close-ups, being among them, showing the underside of the 3-ball landing type gear. Out of these photos, over 100 of them.
Whoa.
What's happened to the other ones? So these were like 100-odd full close-up images of the underside of this, whatever this thing was that was flying over them.
Yeah.
and they've never been released to the public. They've never got them back. They've never had an explanation as to why they didn't get them back.
More so having someone come and meet you.
From 200 miles away.
From 200 miles away, and that's a long way away.
It's very strange.
It's pretty crazy.
So there's an example of in the olden days, just to show how things were very much just, oh no, just don't talk about it.
Yeah. Madness. Absolute madness.
Okay, to follow on from that story, I have one here from Manjimup, and this one took place, the listener says, from between 1974 and 1975. A couple were driving home from Perth to Manjimup in the summer of either 74 or 75. They were driving just outside of Balingup when they spotted lots of little lights way up in the sky flying around. They drove up a hill and parked the car. That's when they spotted a larger light further up in the night sky, amongst all the smaller lights. Then all of a sudden, all the little lights flew into the big light, and then the big light flew away.
Whoa.
So they've obviously pulled over to, what's this thing? What's going on? Look at all those little lights.
That's pretty cool.
So that was in, Balingup?
Yep.
Between Manjimup and Balingup? No. They were just outside of Balingup, so they were driving home from Perth to Manjimup.
Yeah.
So that was close to here.
That's very close to here.
Yeah.
Holy smokes, man, that's cool.
So that's a really cool one. Thank you for sending that one in. And that we've also received another this story is crazy. Absolutely crazy. And this one took place same area, so this was in Manjimup. Right. And this was during the day. So let me just reiterate, this was during the day, not night time, and this took place a couple of hours south from here.
What?
Sometime between 1968 and 1971, this incident occurred to this person who shall remain anonymous.
Fair enough.
She was a teenager in Manjimup, and it was the weekend, and she was walking home with her friend. They just finished gymnastics class, which was held at the Manjimup Senior High School. It was daylight, so there was quite a few other people around. They were walking along the road when they noticed a few cars pulling over to the side. The drivers of the cars were all looking up and pointing at the sky. So her and her friend naturally looked up to see what everyone else was looking at. At first glance, she saw a very small, what she thought was a piece of ash paper floating up in the sky. It was an ashy colour. Soon enough, she realised it was something else, as it got closer and closer. There was no sound at all. According to her, it was without a doubt a UFO, and it just hovered above them. It was dark underneath. She saw windows, and she saw people inside, humans, who appeared to be in uniforms similar to the military. To this day, she is convinced it was an overseas government testing out a UFO that they had discovered. And there were quite a few witnesses to this. There was at least one article written about it in a local newspaper. So this listener is trying to track down that article, because I believe from what you've said of when you discussed this incident with this listener, that they had been told to be quiet, to not talk about it.
Yeah.
So this is another hush-hush incident.
Just again, such an incident of the time as well. Like, people were just...
in the 60s.
Anything that was weird,
don't talk about
it.
Pretend you haven't seen it. Go home, pretend you haven't seen it. And this was a large... I mean, multiple cars had pulled over, causing them to stop and go, oh, what are they looking at?
Yep.
You know?
And that's really crazy.
That's pretty nuts. And that was in Manjimup. There was a listing I found in a case file in the archives, which very peculiarly, I thought, what a coincidence.
Yeah.
Another Manjimup UFO, strange object in the sky. This is in 1938, though. The link was damaged, and it took me to a weird, completely different page. So I couldn't find the actual story.
Really?
And this is in a proper archive, so every other one was legit. Like, it wasn't just a random web. This was an archive.
Yeah.
And so every time I tried multiple times, like, oh, maybe I've clicked on the wrong one. Try it again. Oh, shit, hang on. So
couldn't get to the actual
couldn't
article.
find this particular article. So whether that one's been removed for some reason, thought that was pretty odd. Now, jumping across the pond here, because I just thought it'd be worth, for the skeptics out there, providing you with a story where there was more than one credible witnesses, wasn't just sort of civilians, so to speak. I'd heard one this week that was pretty friggin' cool. It's in southern Illinois. And the reason that it drew me to it was, for one, it was triangular shaped, but also it was a similarity where it was these bright lights seen on a highway by multiple cars.
Yeah.
And it had no sound.
Yeah.
So it was this large football field sized craft.
That's pretty big.
But it generated no sound at all.
Whoa.
And the initial sighting was by a bloke, love his name, Melvin Knoll. Melvin Knoll. And he is a truck driver, but he also runs the mini golf and the go-kart track. And he'd got home from on a drive in his truck.
Yeah.
And he got back to near where he lives, and he'd had to pull over, and he'd seen this massive light in the sky, and he said he watched it for a long time.
Yeah.
Said it was moving really, really slow, and then he realised, okay, that's nothing I've ever seen. And this is a long-distance truck driver, someone who's out at night all the time, probably seen every kind of thing there is to see. So he, for the sake of his sanity, said, I need to go report this to the police, because then at least one of them will come out and have a look at it.
Yeah.
And then, because no one's going to believe me.
Yeah.
He's like, no one will believe me if I tell them tomorrow.
Well, it makes sense. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Get a cop involved and go, what do you reckon?
So this thing was so obvious for so long that he managed to call up the police, tell them to go and check it out. The police obviously then radioed, and you can hear the radio, like online, you can listen to all the communication.
Yeah.
The radio the signal goes out, and his, the main base is saying, you got to go check this out. Apparently there's been a report on this road of an unidentified flying object, and the police that was on duty, like out on the field, said, are you kidding? Is this a joke?
Yeah.
And she's like, absolutely not. You need to go and check it out. And then the next audio you hear from the police officer is like, I can see it. There's something here, but I have no idea what it is. And so he followed it, radioed the next town, and said, okay, it's coming across to you. Your turn. You got to come and see this.
Whoa. 6
different police officers in 6 different vehicles trailed this thing. So as soon as he'd get to a certain point, the next officer would then, he's like, okay, you got to watch it now.
Whoa.
6 different officers all saw it.
That's crazy.
All of them reported the same thing. It was the size of a football field, very vibrant, bright lights, made no sound at all.
Yeah.
And they all were just like, I don't know what the hell we saw.
Yeah. That's madness.
And then the last one that saw it said it dropped down off the road. He had to pull across off the road. Yeah. And this isn't in like a backwood area. This is like where he was showing where this road was. There was a service station. There was stuff there. There was a shop. And he's pulled over and it's gone down like behind all these trees. So he lost sight of it and it just sort of lowered. And that was like the last anyone saw of this thing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Really crazy.
So many people.
So many people and police officers who were like, what a nut job. Yeah. You know, and then they've gone out there and gone, what?
We don't know what's going on.
We don't know what's going on. You got to get out here and see this. So, 6 different officers saw it.
That's really cool.
Yeah, which made Melvin Knoll feel pretty good. Yeah, it crossed into different counties, 3 different counties, I believe. That's why so many officers saw it.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Good story.
So there's a really cool one from just to for those skeptics out there. It's like these things get seen. Yeah. And people who don't believe in this stuff see them. Yeah. And until you've seen something, you won't believe in it. And I can totally understand that. Yeah. Absolutely. But when you have seen it, it's very hard to then turn a blind eye and say, oh, no, nothing like that exists.
It's harder to unsee it.
It's harder to unsee it than to see it. That's exactly right. Here's another one that took place coming back across to Australia again, WA again. This one took place in 1965 in Carnarvon. So this is still in WA, but a bit further away from where we are. So this was during the first week of August. 2 residents from Nedlands, Western Australia, jumped in their car, jumped from their car, fearing a UFO was about to hit it.
Whoa.
So it was close to 8 p.m. and Dr. Antonin Kulka, formerly a physician in Europe, and Mrs. Audrey Lawrence were driving near Carnarvon when a flying object dived towards their headlights. Dr. Kulka hurriedly stopped and switched off the lights. As he and Mrs. Lawrence ran to the side of the road, the UFO stopped and hovered over the highway.
Whoa.
It was rocking gently, Dr. Kulka said, and its orange colour as it dived had changed to a fluorescent green glow. The doctor's bull terrier, usually first out the car when it stopped, was crouched in the back seat, hackles up. It refused to budge. Dr. Kulka said the object was shaped like a squashed football. I had the fear that whatever it was not man-made, he reported after the UFO had left the scene. The sighting appeared partly confirmed by resident Ron Butler, owner of a nearby Mooka station. Butler said his entire camp had been lit up by a greenish glow when something passed over it, though he could not be sure of the time.
Whoa.
So confirmed by a whole camp of people saw it as well. So that was in 1965 in Carnarvon.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So there you go. Another West Australian one. There's a lot. There's so much.
You've done your research, lady. Look
I
at all
have
these.
done my research. Tons and tons of digging through archives for you, the listener. Because my goal is to keep it local. Because we do have stories. And I'm going to now share with you one which is really close to where we are and quite crazy. To the point that I've even found a police report. The police report.
Whoa.
And even whoever's put this together is quite brilliant. He's even found, there was doctor reports. This poor guy got run through the ringer.
Yeah.
They were like, they got a doctor to test him for every kind of illness, mental illness, you name it, because they were like, this can't be legit.
Isn't real.
Yeah. So this took place in Boyup Brook, 1967. Geez, there is a lot going on in the 60s and the 70s. But these lights, the lights trailing the cars, that seems to be the last 10 years or so. More just the weird lights that look like cars.
Yeah.
As opposed to like them coming over the top. I mean, very similar.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're just a bit more shy.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you gotta be weary.
Gotta be weary. There's smartphones now. You can get caught. They know we have better technology. So this one took place in Boyup Brook. So an identified flying object was seen on the Kojonup Road last night by a man who refuses to give his name because of possible ridicule. So this is in the Bunbury newspaper.
Yeah.
The sighting, which is made about 10 miles from Mayonup, am I saying that right?
Mayonup. I'm just trying to think of where that is. It does sound right.
So the sighting was made about 10 miles from Mayonup. At about 9:30 p.m. was reported to Constable L. Johnson of the Boyup Brook Police Station. Constable Johnson said the man was travelling about 60 miles per hour when suddenly his car stopped. The engine and lights went off. He had no sensation of stopping. A tube of light descended towards the windscreen of his car and he could look up it, and he thought someone was looking down at him. Up the tube of light he could see a 30-foot pulsating bluish football-shaped object, which was iridescent and made no noise. He just sat looking at the object. In a flash, the object was gone, and he was once more driving at 60 miles per hour with the lights on.
Whoa. That's crazy.
Yep. Pretty insane. So the bloke that this happened to was a wool classer by profession. He was a married man with 3 kids. And he'd had 60 men working for him. And the day this happened, he'd just finished paying off one team at the CSIRO research farm, Glen Lossie, near Kojonup at about 8:30 p.m. local time. He'd stopped in at Kojonup to have 2 drinks. Then he headed roughly westward towards Mayonup, some 66 kilometres away. From Mayonup, he intended to travel a further 15 kilometres north to Boyup Brook to visit another team of men. He travelled these roads quite frequently, and the terrain is undulating with fairly tall 18 to 21 metre trees. The incident happened some distance before Boyup Brook, which places it to the east of, but close to, Mayonup. The time of the incident was at about 9:30. It was dark. It was a dark, starlit night. Harris was travelling alone at a speed of 100 to 105 kilometres when all of a sudden the machine just stopped dead. So this is a more detailed description, just so you know what I'm doing. And all electrical systems, motor, radio, everything went dead. I had no feeling of deceleration at all. The car just instantaneously came to a stop. I didn't feel no feeling of deceleration. He felt the car had just stopped. Then an object was present. A hollow tube of light, clear in colour, descended out of an object down onto him. He was able to look up the tube as there was no glare or anything inside this tube, although it was bright and glary on the outside. The tube was estimated to be about 60 to 90 centimetres in diameter. He stated he had the feeling he was being observed through this tube. He couldn't see anything up the tube, felt no fear, didn't think of anything, just stared up the tube. He's like, oh, what's this?
There's a tube.
After about 5 minutes, the tube of light closed off like you'd switch off a light. The object itself was described at least 9 metres in diameter and was about 30 metres off the ground. The tube came out of it at about a 45-degree angle and came down on the windscreen of my vehicle. It sort of focused right on me. Shape-wise, it was like an Australian football oval. I could only see the underpart of it. It was all glowing itself. It had an iridescent sort of light bluish coloured light and was sort of all glowing. After the tube switched off, the object took off at terrific speed and vanished out of sight within seconds. It left to the west with a slight darkening of its colour. The moment it left, my machine was doing exactly the same speed as it was doing before it stopped. I had no feeling of acceleration at all. It was just like gravity had stopped. There was no difficulty controlling the vehicle. During the event, he had not tried to move or he just simply sat holding the steering wheel.
That is crazy.
Mr. Harris noted that there was no noise whatsoever. And incidentally, whilst it was there, everything around the place was dead quiet. There wasn't a sound of any sort. After the object had left, he stopped the car, got out, looked around, and then drove to the Boyup Brook police station where he reported the incident. Well done. I would do the same thing. What in the hell just happened? When he reached Boyup Brook, he noticed his Amiga chronometer, his watch, was 5 minutes slow, although it didn't usually lose time.
Whoa.
A week later, Harris returned to the area and stopped at the Kojonup Golden Fleece garage. Here he found that a man had seen the same object, and that 2 other farmers around Mayonup, one named Bock, had seen the same thing.
That is crazy.
Questioned by Zek on his health, Harris said he'd never had blackouts, faints or concussion, although since the event happened, he'd been having terrific headaches in the last few weeks. Mr. Harris, GP, who was present at the interview with Zek, advised that Harris had consulted him for 3.5 years and had no psychiatric issues at all. Nothing.
Yeah.
There was nothing wrong with him. Dr. Zek contacted Bock and Mr. O'Halloran at the Golden Fleece garage. In Zek's opinion, O'Halloran saw a satellite. The garage owner and Bock denied seeing anything unusual. Bastards.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, the doctor who went on to analyse all of it and work out what medical thing could cause it.
Could even be vaguely.
Yeah, well, he's come up with multiple ideas of what he thinks could have happened, but then at the end, his fourth. So the first is a hoax.
Yep.
He's made it all up.
Yep.
Dropping off to sleep at the wheel and dreaming.
Yeah, not at 60 mile an hour and then
not having
coming back into it again at 60 mile an hour.
Temporal lobe epilepsy, but again, no sign of any. He doesn't have epilepsy. Or a genuine encounter was his fourth.
Yeah.
So, well,
that's just great. And sorry.
It's hard for him because he was on his own.
Yeah.
This is what makes this whole thing. This is why when people have these experiences, no one believes them.
Yeah. Because generally you're on your own.
And skeptics just go, what? You're only going by what he's seen.
Yeah.
But if there's other people, at least there's some, verification. You go, okay, well, 2 people saw it.
Yeah.
That's pretty weird.
To validate.
Which is probably why he's gone and found out, well, these guys have seen it as well.
Yeah.
Only to then have them go, oh, no, we didn't see anything. Yeah. Because, it's the whole, we're not crazy.
We don't want to join in on that.
Yeah.
But it's funny you're saying though. I've just worked out where Maynup is, because that's a fairly like he says, like he describes it. It's a hilly section, but it's again driving that road. You can see such a long way.
Yeah.
And that, to me, just sort of you think about where it is and the situation to be dumped in. If you stopped on that road at 60 k's an hour, 60 mile an hour,
crash into a tree.
There is no way you wouldn't come off that road.
Yeah,
it's a single lane road.
If he'd fallen asleep, he would have crashed into a tree.
Anything else, pretty much.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
This is what the police report says. So this is direct from what the constable Leonard Johnson, Constable 2514, has written. Monday, 30th of October, 1969. Oh, they've got his name here. They've got his real name here.
Oh.
I won't read it out just in case. I have to report that at approximately 9:35 on Monday, the 30th of October, 1967, this particular individual, who was 37 years at the time, and who was a shearing contractor at the Great Southern Company, called at this station and reported having sighted an unidentified flying object on the Kojonup-Maynup Road. I don't know what Kullik Up means. Approximately 10 miles from Maynup at about 9:20 p.m. on the 30th of October, 1969. So it was officially documented with the police. But as per the norm, they probably just put it down to he's a crackpot.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Now we're going to drift slightly east to the Bass Strait, because this case is just I'm slightly obsessed with the 40s, but because of the way this one I haven't heard many stories about planes witnessing. I mean, I know I've heard of planes seeing flying objects whilst in the sky.
Yeah.
But this took place in 1944, and it was the whole crew of the Beaufort bomber flying at about 4,500 feet over Bass Strait, and it was during February of 1944. This whole incident they've claimed is the first or one of the earliest electromagnetic cases.
Really?
Yeah, where they've experienced some sort of craft that's affected
the instruments. And
the instruments,
Whoa.
like an interference of the electromagnetic field.
Crazy.
Which is also associated with a lot of hauntings.
Yes.
So maybe there's a correlation there. Who knows? Maybe we all go to space when we die. another one.
Another rabbit hole. See ya.
Boo. So at about 2:30 a.m. on this day in February of 1944, the plane gained a most unusual companion. A dark shadow appeared alongside the plane and kept pace with it, at a distance of some 100 to 150 feet. The Beaufort was travelling at about 235 miles an hour. The object appeared to have flickering lights and flame belching from its rear end. Only about 15 feet of the rear end of the UFO was visible to the bomber, apparently due to the reflection of the light from the exhaust. The strange object stayed with the bomber for some 18 to 20 minutes, during which time all radio and direction-finding instruments refused to function. It finally accelerated from the plane at approximately 3 times the speed of the bomber, so that would be...
Yeah, that's moving.
705 miles an hour?
Yep.
Or 710 miles an hour?
A jet from these days.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yep. And upon landing, the pilot reported the incident to his base superiors, but he claimed he just got laughed at. They just laughed at him.
Yeah, of course. It's odd.
Piss off. Yeah, so that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, because there's nothing of that era that could go that fast.
No.
Absolutely nothing.
Not to mention, why would it interfere with all of the online systems?
Yeah.
Like, it just makes no sense. So this is there's plenty of cases online, but obviously was trying to find some close to Australia where there have been pilots in the air and there's been cases of planes, bombers chasing off and shooting at UFOs.
Oh dear.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So one main thing I've noticed with all of these stories is that they've taken place, obviously, on long stretches of road, isolated, and no sound is being emitted by these things that people are seeing, or these lights, or whatever. That's weird to me.
Yeah, well, we haven't made anything that can do that yet. Make no sound.
Yeah, it's just super strange and things that can move faster than cars or faster than other aircraft, how can they do that without generating sound? Yeah. It's very strange.
We just don't have that.
And you can try and, because I always try and think of it, what could it be that we have on Earth? But especially the older cases, you can just you can't even put it down to drones.
No.
Like a lot of modern cases, you can at least you can put that into the equation.
Yeah.
So could it have been a drone?
Yeah, you could hint at it, but
one thing that happens at night with your night vision is that objects do appear larger, especially illuminated objects. It's an optical illusion that our eyes do play tricks on us. We do view lights to be brighter and bigger than what they actually are. But even taking that into account, some of these stories tonight, I just can't. I can't really put.
You can't explain them away.
No. And then there's the theory of it being balls of swamp, like gas.
Swamp gas.
Swamp gas. That is quite a common occurrence, a common thing that gets brought up to rationalise some of these cases where there's the bright green light in one of the stories could have been some sort of solar flare, or that happens. We have the Aurora Borealis and the Aurora Australis. Yeah. It could have just been in that exact moment. Perhaps there could have been something. And but then that doesn't regards the guy in the car that saw the tube.
Exactly.
I don't know what he's seen there.
Yeah. And
I don't know.
Yeah, there's some very, very interesting stories there.
There's a lot of weird stuff going on in our state, so keep your eyes peeled if you're out on a night drive, because it's not just been in the 60s.
Nope. I'm
still getting reports of these strange lights following cars up until 2 months ago.
That's crazy.
So, if you've had an experience with strange lights on the road that you can't put your finger on, or you'd like to find a safe place to at least talk about it so you feel better, write it on in, send it on through to me. Yep. Because we're ready to hear with non-judgmental ears, and we're also here to try and debunk stuff for your sake. Not to say that you're wrong, but sometimes you want someone to go, this is what it was, or this is what it could have been. And I do try very hard to do that for the sake of people's sanity.
Just to give you an option.
To give you an option to go, look, okay, I didn't have a demon trying to yank me out of bed. It was just that my leg had gone to sleep, and it was my blanket, you know? This is what I'm here for. I'm here for your paranormal therapy session. Yeah, that's what I'm here for. So we're not going to jump straight to conclusions and think everything's something supernatural or paranormal, but we are very open to the possibility that it is. Yeah. Because I know for a fact there's a lot more going on than we all seem to think.
Try us. See what happens.
Yeah. Give it a go.
Yep.
Send your story through. Test the waters.
Yep.
I promise I'll be gentle. So as it's the 10th episode, I thought it would be pretty cool to read a pretty incredible story to finish off the episode. As we've kept it pretty local for most of it, I wanted to share with you an outrageous story, one that's shaped the alien world, so to speak, here on Earth. The grand finale. This story didn't occur in Australia, but it's one that has influenced the likes of Steven Spielberg, so it's pretty intense, this story. So this took place in Hopkinsville in 1954. A resident of Pennsylvania, Billy Ray Taylor, was visiting his friend Lucky Sutton and his family in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. At 7 p.m, Billy Ray went outside to fetch some water from the family well, when he spotted a giant, large glowing object off in the distance, and it appeared to be landing in a nearby gully. Billy Ray ran inside to tell the family what he'd just seen, and they laughed at him. They were convinced he was pranking them.
Yeah.
So they were like, piss off. Yeah, good one, Billy. Ha ha. And he just stood there. He's like, no, I'm serious. So having not believed him, they sat back down, settled in for the rest of the night as they were.
Yeah.
Then the dog started going absolutely mental. Now, this dog was placid, really well behaved, never went off like this, ever.
Yeah.
And he was going proper crazy, barking like a maniac. So naturally, Lucky, who was the homeowner, sort of went, this isn't normal. Billy, could you come outside with me? I think there must be an intruder. So the two men grabbed a couple of firearms and went out to see what was going on and who was on the property, because it was literally like a defensive barking this dog was doing.
Yeah.
Not only that, but the dog then whimpered and hid under the house.
Whoa.
Where the dog remained until the morning.
Okay.
Refused to come out. That frightened this dog who'd never done this before.
Because animals know.
They know. Animals know. So the two lads grab their firearms, the men of the house, and they go outside. They start heading off the little porch when they spot emerging from the nearby woods a creature about 4 foot high with its arms in the air. Long arms. Not only that, this is how they've described it, like after the event. It had large eyes, an extremely long mouth, and pointy like bat ears. And the hands were like claws.
Whoa.
They were visibly like long, skinny, pointy fingers, like claws.
Yeah.
So these two guys are like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
So then the creature continued to move slowly towards them. It was in silver clothing.
Yeah.
So it was wearing clothing. It wasn't Nicky Boo.
Yeah.
It continued to walk towards the two men. It was now about 20 feet away and still getting closer. And they were completely unaware of its intentions.
That's pretty close.
So naturally, they were very scared. They decided to shoot the creature.
Oh.
So they opened fire, but the creature did a backflip out of the way and then ran back into the woods. So Billy Ray and Lucky had stated to the police there is absolutely no way they could have missed from that distance.
Yeah.
So they believed they'd wounded the creature. They set off to see if they could find the body or find it.
Yeah.
Because they figured, well, if it's wounded, what the hell, we have to know what it is.
Yeah.
Before they could even take a foot, like, past where they'd stepped off the porch, they heard a noise behind them, turned around, and there's another creature crouching on the roof of the porch, right above them.
Whoa.
Arms in the air. Same exact thing.
Oh, that's
super creepy.
That's creepy.
So naturally, shot at it, did the same thing, flipped backwards, and then ran off. So it flipped off the roof and then took off into the woods. Both the men then went, ah, and ran back inside, only to hear screaming coming from another family member in the house. And there, at the window, was a third creature trying to get in through the window. So naturally, they shoot again at this other creature. This kept going for some time, with more and more creatures appearing. Whoa. The family could hear scratching on the roof as if something was trying to get in. So, now under extreme amount of stress, the families just went, fuck this, grabbed their guns, grabbed their keys, ran out to the two vehicles that were on the property, piss-bolted in the cars to the nearest police station, where they spoke to Police Chief Russell Greville, reported the entire incident to him, who believed the families. Just flat out was like, he 100% believed them because the basically the state that they were in.
Yeah, you can't fake that.
They were so terrified, and also he knew the families well.
Yeah.
He knew they weren't believers in any of this crap. He knew they would never make this shit up. Yeah. Why would they? He knew for a fact that they're not the kind of people to make this story up.
Yeah.
So he also got a medical professional to examine them. And the medical professional documented they all had elevated heart rates due to extreme stress.
Yeah.
So that was another, they've almost been scared to death. Yeah. So that's why they're like this.
Massive panic.
Yep. So then 20 police officers accompanied the families back to the farmhouse. They investigated the whole place. There was no intruders there when they got there.
Yeah.
They could see all the bullet holes from where the shots were made at all the sort of entry points of the property. So that confirmed the story that there was something trying to get in and they'd been shooting at it.
Yep.
So that confirmed it for the cops. After they finished their investigation, they left. And then an hour later, the creatures came back.
Oh, no.
So this poor family, getting harassed again, apparently went on for another hour or so, and then it stopped.
What?
So the police went and interviewed neighbours as well.
Yeah.
Because they were like, what is going... I mean, as you would.
Yeah, yep.
And they confirmed they could hear gunshots and strange noises coming from the property, and hysteria, obviously.
Yeah.
They'd heard weird noises and seen weird bright lights in the sky just before it started, the gunshots started, and confirmed seeing a strange ship coming down, a weird ship coming down near this farmhouse.
Whoa.
So other neighbours confirmed it. Other reliable neighbours too, this police chief had said that they're just people that wouldn't make this stuff up. They don't believe in this stuff. They would never in the wildest dreams make it up. There was also luminescent puddles found on the ground, presumably from these creatures that had been injured.
Yeah.
These hot, weird little puddles of stuff. Now, at the time, the police, it was the 50s and it was a small town.
Yeah.
They didn't take samples of it and they said, look, we're going to come back in the morning and do a bit more of an investigation.
Yeah.
When they returned it, it's obviously sunk into the ground or it evaporated or something, so they couldn't get samples of it. A police officer that wasn't involved in this investigation, he was on duty at the time, but he was nowhere near this. He had no knowledge of what had been going on.
Yeah.
He'd actually come back to the station and reported seeing a strange spaceship-looking thing and lights in the sky right over exactly where the house was. So there was a separate police officer who had no knowledge of the case, had come in and said, yes, I saw it as well. So what makes this so incredible, this whole story, is that the town actually all believed this everyone believed them.
Yeah, yep.
And then they became dubbed, the creatures became known as the Hopkinsville Goblins. But another name that was coined by the townsfolk was Little Green Men. And that is where the term Little Green Men comes from. It comes from an actual case of a couple of families witnessing little green creatures. Well, they weren't green technically, but they were dubbed the Little Green Men.
Yeah.
That's where it started. As a result of this incident reported to police. That's where that term comes from. Also, this incident was the inspiration for Steven Spielberg to make E.T.
No way.
Yeah. Having heard this story, he was inspired to make E.T.
Well, that's really cool.
So there you go. There's a story to top off episode 10. A little bit of spooky, alien-y, awesome stuff. And so tonight, as you lie in bed, having listened to Spooky Town Tales, if you hear scratching on your roof or scratching at your door, you may very well be being visited by the Hopkinsville Goblins. Sweet dreams. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's episode. I'm a little bit worn out tonight, so I do apologise. It's not as energetic as any other episode.
No, you've done great. And congratulations on episode 10.
Thank you very much. Thanks heaps. And yes, please give me your feedback. Share the show with anyone that you think might be interested in local history and local weird stuff. And if you've got some local weird stuff that you want to share, please send it through to me. Please don't send nudes though. Not interested.
Not that weird.
Not that kind of weird stuff.
The other kind of weird.
The other kind of weird stuff. Thank you for listening. And remember, folks, this is Morgan.
And Jimmy.
Stay spooky.
Bye.